right? This is a long wheelbase. Short wheelbase, long wheelbase. Hello everyone, so today I will be covering the topic about trucks. I'll be covering 7 truck manufacturers that are quite popular here in the EU market and probably elsewhere in this world. So I'll be covering Scania, Volvo, MAN, Mercedes, Duff, Iveco, and the Renault Trucks. Very long time, utility vehicles have been a very high demand in the automotive industry because the economy needs to keep moving. But in order for the economy to move smoothly, you need to have the reliable equipment. The equipment that's affordable. You also need to have the equipment that works on time. There are many factors to consider when choosing the right asset and the right equipment for the duties you're about to perform. We're going to start by talking about each and every truck manufacturer. So I am going to start with the Swedish manufacturers. Scania. Alright, let's start with Scania. But I mean, overall Scania has quite a big name, and especially as a tractor truck. But let's talk about the brand itself. Scania has had a very long reputation, and being Swedish, they're actually very reliable. Scania has had a reputation for reliability, and that too, I've noticed Scania has the biggest fan base out of all the brands I know. And when I say fan base, I mean literally, guys. They have a massive amount of followers. Basically, I notice a lot of people love to modify their Scania trucks. They like to tune that V8 engine. Scania has the most modifications available. And this cannot be really said about other truck manufacturers. Now, one thing I have to note about Scania is that their trucks are very reliable and good, but in terms of price tag, from what I've heard, their trucks are a bit above. Scania is like the Mercedes of trucks, okay? So you know how Mercedes cars are premium and everything, but rather, you know, like good quality. They can be at a price, at expensive, right? Same for Scania. Scania, they tend to be at a price. So it's like these are really reputed trucks, and that kind of do a bit of everything. But I feel like the best Scania trucks are actually the heavy duty ones, like the ones for the long routes. So let's say driving from Brussels to Paris, let's say, for example, right? Or another good example would be the 8-wheelers. So for example, an 8-wheel version that has a crane equipped to it. We will cover that later, what each and every brand, what models suit each and every brand. But first we will talk about the brands itself. You want my opinion of Scania? Well, if you want me to be honest, Scania is a good brand of truck. It's very reliable and very reputed. In fact, I've heard quite a lot about it around the world. Like, I've noticed they have quite a big name in New Zealand. And there are many forums on the internet and many sources that have discussed about Scania trucks and how they are very reliable. So it's proven. It's proven. Which is very good. Over to Volvo. Alright, so guys, here's how I see Volvo. Volvo trucks are like the Toyota of trucks. So basically, my view of Toyota cars is that their cars are very reliable, but at the same time, a bit boring. It's just too reliable that it's like driving from A to B without falling apart, which is the philosophy of Volvo. But Volvo takes one step ahead. Volvo actually focuses a lot about safety. They care a lot about safety, which is proven. I mean, I have seen many sources discussing about how Volvo trucks are actually very safe. And then also another thing about Volvo trucks is that they are said to be very reliable. In fact, they are one of the most reliable trucks in the automotive industry, but boring as well. They're, like I've noticed, they don't have as much of a fan base compared to Scania, their Swedish brothers, which is very interesting. Quite a big contrast. But and I've noticed that in terms of design and aesthetics, Scania has always had an interesting style. They always had this beefy look about them, whereas Volvo trucks were always basic, always simple to look at. In fact, this is what I think about Volvo trucks. It's more like it's the reliability, the safety, and the technology that does the talking. The design is not meant to say anything. It's not meant to appeal to anyone. It seems like Volvo has their priorities on functionality. They don't really care about aesthetics too much. This used to be the case for Volvo cars, but then let's say 2008, Geely took over and turned Volvo into a premium brand. But the Volvo Trucks is not owned by Geely. So therefore, this is where the Scandinavian pride remains. And I love it, guys. You want my opinion of Volvo? Well, one thing I have to say about Volvo is that their trucks are... I've noticed they're very popular here in Belgium. They have quite a big name. Like, I've seen them in almost every field. They're being used. But just the only questionable aspect about Volvo is that their trucks are a bit boring. It's like straight to the point about it. And this would make sense because Volvo also makes construction equipments. So, you know, I guess Volvo trucks have been built on functionality. They've not really concentrated on aesthetics too much. Now, in terms of usage, Volvo has a good reputation for heavy duty, I've noticed. When it comes to small trucks, the Swedish brothers are not very good with small trucks, both Scania and Volvo. Forget about small trucks, but we'll cover that later, as I've mentioned earlier. But just saying, otherwise, Volvo owns Renault Trucks, so therefore, when it comes to the small truck segment, Volvo has a little bit more advantage, I'd say, compared to Scania. Alrighty everyone, now we're gonna cover the topic of the German brothers, MAN and Mercedes. Just because they both are German, yes, maybe quality may be on their side, but usability was not always on their side. At least both of them never had the same use from the very beginning. Mercedes was born out of versatility. Mercedes trucks, they were born from versatility. They were always in demand since the very beginning for different purposes. So you'd have a Mercedes truck for long routes, you have a Mercedes truck for construction, you have a Mercedes truck for delivery. Even during the World Wars, Mercedes had a big role, and even after the World Wars, Mercedes still had a big role everywhere. Whereas whenever I think of MAN trucks, the first thing that comes to my mind is construction. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. If you like whenever I see a MAN truck, I think of super heavy duty, super heavy haulage, or military purpose. And also when it comes to design, a remarkable difference between the two brands, the two Germans, is that Mercedes has always been more proud. That their designs has always been more in your face, or they've always been the Mercedes badge was always the most conspicuous thing, and they would always make their trucks look serious, like serious business, right? And this did start particularly around the World War eras, or even before the World War era, I believe. The era when there used to be proud noses for the trucks. So, for instance, this is the truck, and you'd have a proud Mercedes badge at the front, and then the circular lights on the side. This is what I'm trying to point out. Whereas MAN trucks, they were always boxy. I've noticed their cabs were always squarish. So this is like an example of a MAN truck, I'd say, you know, a square cab and, you know, basic headlights and everything. Now, in terms of reliability, they both were reliable back in the 70s, 80s. Their reliability was with the Germans until the 90s. In the 90s, the two German brothers started suffering. Now, when it comes to reliability, here's the funny part. I did touch the topic of reliability just now. The 90s, both of them plummeted. But Mercedes trucks have a longer life here in Belgium, I've noticed. Like here in Belgium, they have a bigger fan base. Like I've noticed people prefer Mercedes trucks over MAN. Whereas MAN trucks, here in Belgium, they don't last very long. French cars last longer than MAN trucks. This is the joke that's going around. Well, this is the joke I invented, but I'm saying it because it's the reality. This is what I've seen. I've seen French cars from the 90s and early 2000s that are still running in the countryside and even here outside of Brussels. Whereas when it comes to MAN trucks, okay, from being brought brand new today, they will only last 10 years. After 10 years, they vanish from our roads. That's one thing I've noticed. It's very rare you'll see a MAN that's aged 15 years old or probably 10 years old. And this is not the case of Mercedes. Mercedes trucks actually last long. But I've noticed Mercedes trucks demand maintenance. If you show some love and respect to Mercedes trucks, they will last a lifetime. They will even outlast the Swedish brothers. But if you mistreat a Mercedes truck, they fall apart catastrophically, just like the MAN. Okay everyone, now I want to cover the topic of Renault trucks. Now Renault, okay, here's the thing about Renault as a brand, okay? They also make cars and they make trucks. Well, now they're separate. Renault Cars has an alliance with Nissan, and Renault Trucks has, now they're under ownership by Volvo. But they have an interesting history, and I'm going to tell you a small story. Renault has had an infamous reputation for trial and error. Now, when it comes to Renault Trucks have had a very interesting history, and it was actually split into two categories. Long time ago, before involvement with Volvo, and before, even before the 1970s, when Citroën went bankrupt. Citroën is relevant, and I'm going to tell you all in a moment why, but bear with me. There were two different French manufacturers of trucks. There was Berliet and there was Saviem. Saviem was the builder of light utility trucks. So basically your small delivery trucks that would travel from A to B for logistic purposes or perhaps for utility purposes, basically everyday life, okay? Like the same reason you'd see a small lightweight truck on the road. Berliet was the heavy duty truck, heavy haulage truck. Basically, they were building trucks for constructions. They were building trucks for super heavy duty, so, super heavy haulage. So those trucks that pull colossal equipment or colossal goods. In the 1970s, Citroën went bankrupt. They were the owner of Berliet. They were the last owner of Berliet. And when bankruptcy happened, Berliet was sold to Renault. Renault trucks have a history of... actually, they have a history of being cheap to afford and kind of popular for fleet purchases. And that's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, when it comes to reliability, I don't quite know, because there have been mixed views about the reliability of Renault trucks. I've seen some sources complaining about them, and I've seen some sources praising them. I think most of the sources that praise Renault trucks are directed at the functionality of the truck. So the truck is very easy to live with, easy to use, very maneuverable. But when it comes to the complaints, I'd say it's the reliability. And I've heard Australian sources complaining about them. In fact, the popular truck was a Renault Magnum. It used to be sold in Australia. It was rebadged as Mack Magnum. There's an American truck manufacturer called Mack. And apparently in Australia, it had an infamous reputation for faulty wiring or faulty problems. That was the sources I read. So, reliability was surely not on Renault's side. My opinion of Renault trucks. Oh, I love Renault trucks. Actually, I like Renault trucks. They're quite nice. I like their design and everything. First of all, the advantage I see of Renault trucks is fleet purchase. That's actually a very good advantage. But then the only thing is that now they're owned by Volvo. The all new Renault trucks I've seen just recently. I saw some new Renault trucks recently, and they look so alike to Volvo trucks, and this leads me to question the identity. Like now it's starting to create a bit of identity issues, And this is not good, because for a French brand, French car manufacturers and truck manufacturers have a reputation for identity. And if identity is lost, the brand practically becomes a bit of a... Yeah, I don't know what to say, guys. But all I just want to say is Renault should maintain its own identity. And Volvo, please, maintain the identity of Renault. Don't dilute it, please. And now I want to cover my favorite truck brand of all, Duff. Oh yes, everyone, Duff Trucks. So Duff Trucks are very nice. In fact, they're my favorite. I love Duff Trucks because I like the design and they look very interesting. In fact, of all the truck manufacturers, I think Duff has the biggest advantage for light utility trucks, or trucks that don't involve super heavy duty, basically. Duff is a Dutch truck manufacturer. Oh yes, the proud Dutch man of all. Now, Duff, I'd say, has a, like, when it comes to reliability, the reliability of Duff is hit or miss. Like, it really depends on the driver. Here in Belgium, I've noticed Duff actually outlast most of the trucks. Like, they live very, very long lives. But otherwise, when it comes to the quality of their trucks, I've been to the Duff Museum, and all I can confirm is that their trucks are like Opel cars. So they are A to B, not something fancy, but they are very functional. They get the job done. That's basically what the kind of trucks Duff trucks are. Last one, but not least, Iveco. Alrighty, Iveco trucks are, in my opinion, they're my least favorite, but I have to say that they are very cheap to afford, and it's actually very good if you do a fleet purchase. That too, Iveco trucks are actually, well, I've seen them in almost every field except super heavy duty or heavy duty trucks. Like, I never see them do heavy duty, but I have seen quite a lot of tractor versions. Alright everyone, now we're going to talk about which brands I believe are best for certain chassis configurations. So now, chassis configuration means, for example, this is short wheelbase. So this truck has a short chassis, and this is a common practice for trucks that are going to be used as tractor trucks. So that means it'll have an attachment point at the back, which will pull a massive trailer, okay? Or sometimes they get to be used as fanfare trucks. So I have seen cases where this is the cab, there's a colossal box at the back, and then there's a little point right here that pulls the trailer for fanfares. I've seen this commonly before. Yes, we will cover this in a moment. And then this is another chassis configuration where the truck does not pull a massive trailer. This will never be used as a tractor truck, but then you have but then this kind of truck will be used for big boxes, or maybe it'll be used for crane or something. You'll see, right? This is a long wheel base. Short wheel base, long wheel base. Okay? Different configurations for chassis that have different purposes. And then also, I'm going to tell you all in a moment the configurations. So let's first discuss about short wheelbase and their purposes, guys, and which brands satisfy the needs, and which I believe are the best, or which I believe are the reputed ones. Okay, so short wheelbase. What do we use a short wheelbase truck for? Oh, I know. Alright, so we use short wheelbase trucks mostly as tractor trucks, as I mentioned earlier, but then sometimes for fanfares as well. Or sometimes what we do is we would have a 6-wheel version. So this is when it has extra wheels at the back, like this, okay? In this format. Or sometimes it could be an 8-wheeler. So we have 2 wheels at the front, 2 wheels at the back. When it comes to road tractors, all of them make good road tractors. All 7 brands. Iveco is actually quite nice. Like, I've seen on the highway, Iveco trucks are quite popular for road tractors, and Iveco also has a reputation for being cheap to afford, so therefore they seem like a popular choice. As for reliability, you all be the judge. Also notice Duff is good at this, Volvo is good at this, Scania is good at this, quite popular as well, Volvo and Scania. Mercedes trucks are quite popular at this as well. Although they don't last very long. That's one thing I've noticed about Mercedes and MAN. Both of them are very good at this, but they depreciate very badly. That's one thing I noticed. They don't last very long compared to Iveco, Volvo, and Scania. And Duff as well. Oh, Duff I think is the most reliable out of them all. But, well, actually Duff is like on par with Volvo and Scania with road tractors. And then when it comes to Renault Trucks, yeah, the reliability is just as bad as the Germans. In fact, it's just, they don't live very long. I remember the Renault Magnum used to be a big deal, the tractor version, but then they vanished very fast. When it comes to road tractors, I'd say the best is Scania, Volvo, Duff, and Iveco. These 4 I'd say are the best road tractors. You all have your opinions, you all have your choices, but Me, I would choose the choice based on reputation, and I think these four brands which I mentioned have one of the best reputations. Mercedes sure has a long reputation in this, but their reliability did change recently. Now, when it comes to heavy haulage tractors, so tractors that have to pull something heavy at the back, or that are like, 8-wheel versions or 10-wheel versions, I have to say the credit would go to MAN or Mercedes or Volvo and perhaps Scania. But if you want me to be honest, it's very rare I see Scania for heavy haulage, and I don't know why. Scania has trucks available for heavy haulage, but they're just never in action. I've never seen them before. It's mostly MAN and Volvo and Mercedes. These are the three I've noticed. These are for heavy haulage tractors, mind you. Otherwise, when it comes to fun fairs, like trucks that are used for pulling trailers for fun fairs, especially here in Belgium, fun fairs are called druivenfeesten. Druivenfeesten is basically a festival season here in Belgium. And whenever I see those festival seasons, there are those trucks like Scanias. I've seen mostly Scania and Duff being used. It's mostly Scania and Duff and Volvo. These three trucks. And they often have a cab here, and then there's a big box, and they pull a long trailer. Like usually there's this point right here that pulls a trailer, for the fun fairs. So yeah. Now we're going to talk about the other chassis configuration. We've covered short wheelbase. Now we're going to move to long wheelbase. So this is long wheelbase. Over here you have the cab. And then over here, the rest of the bodywork is configurable. You can choose what it needs to be used for. Is it going to be a big box? Is it going to be used for refrigerated goods or dry goods? Or is it just going to be a flat bed being used as a tow truck? So when it comes to settings like this, sort of configuration, I have to say that all 7 brands, well actually, I've seen versions like this from all 7 brands, okay? But I have to say the most common one would be Duff, Scania, Volvo, Mercedes, and maybe Renault as well. And that's it. It's very rare that I've seen this from MAN and Iveco. They exist, but they're just a bit rare to spot. In this configuration, guys. They exist, but they're rare. Like MAN and Iveco, they are a bit rare for this. So this comes to prove that, Iveco, I noticed they do good tractors, but they just don't seem very popular in this configuration. MAN, as I've stated earlier, has a good reputation for heavy duty, but when it comes to, like logistics and everything, the other brands take the trophy, I feel. My favorite has to be Duff. I love the Duff in this configuration. Duff would be my favorite, but otherwise I'd say Duff and Volvo. These two, the Duff and Volvo, are my favorite for this configuration. Oh, and on a side note, I just want to remark something very interesting to you all. In this configuration, you can also have it as a fire department truck. Here in Belgium, the fire department uses a lot of Scanias and Mercedes. In fact, Scania has the best reputation for the fire departments around the world, I noticed. Like even I've noticed a source in New Zealand was talking about this, where the fire department, they love Scania trucks. Whereas I have to say that here in Belgium, I've also seen MAN being used by the fire department, but it's a bit rare to see a MAN truck. Otherwise, Iveco I've noticed the only Iveco they use is the daily van. That's it. They only use the Iveco daily, and the rest they often use Mercedes and Scania. That's all I've seen. Okay, everyone, and now you can also have a configuration like this. All right, a configuration like this. So do you see a difference? I added another set of wheels at the back. Now, this sort of configuration is also popular for all usage. And now I also want to touch the topic of garbage trucks. Just a side note, okay? Just a little deviation. When it comes to garbage trucks, here in Belgium, I've noticed in the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium, the Dutch-speaking part, Duff has quite a big name. But as soon as you go in Brussels or in the French-speaking part of Belgium, it's mostly Mercedes and Renault trucks, which is very interesting as observation, guys. I've noticed in Brussels, they tend to have only one wheel at the back, okay? So it will be a four-wheel garbage truck, which makes sense so that there's added maneuverability. Although I have seen some Mercedes truck with this format, but these are modified ones with different purposes. Whereas in Flanders, in the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium, they have Duff Trucks mostly. I don't know the reason why, but I was told that it's because of good pricing for fleet purchases. See? Remember what I said earlier about fleet purchase? They budgeted. So guys, the best brands for this configuration, like okay, first let's talk about what I've seen as very popular with this chassis setting. With this setting, the most popular I've seen, I have to say it's between Duff, Scania, Mercedes. I have seen some MAN trucks as well, but I'll tell you their purposes in a moment. And Volvo as well. But let's start with the first three I mentioned. For Duff, Mercedes, and... well, okay, actually with Duff and Mercedes, I've also seen Iveco being used as this purpose. But I've noticed that with this chassis setting, they usually use it for construction, like to carry construction goods. So usually I've seen versions like this having a crane sitting right here. So for example, there'll be a crane sitting right here, and then there will be the rest of the back which will be used as storage to hold construction goods. So which one is the best truck for this configuration, like this? I have to say that if you're talking about construction goods, like if you're going to carry construction equipment or construction materials, MAN has potentials, but if you have an extra wheel right here, like with MAN, I would add an extra wheel, which I'm going to do in a moment. Otherwise, if you have a setting like this, with this chassis setting, I'd stick to something like Duff, Scania, and Volvo. These are the three I'd stick to. I would also recommend Mercedes. Like, I think in this cause, Mercedes is not bad. They have actually quite good trucks with this chassis setting. Right, everyone, and then you have a final configuration like this, right? 8-wheel configuration, like this. So, the both wheels at the front, they turn, and the back wheels don't, although maybe they're, on some configurations, you can have this back wheel turn, the last one. Now, this configuration is very popular for dump trucks or trucks with a crane right here. So let's say this is the crane, okay? Right here, this would be the crane, and then over here there'd be goods, or maybe this could be used as a, well, I don't know, the military application as well. For this configuration, I've noticed that Duff is actually a bit rare in this. It exists, but it's rare. Scania is quite popular. In fact, I've seen some people modify it. In fact, Scania in this edition is like, you know, it's very popular either as a tractor or as this version. Now, another brand that's popular with this setting, this chassis configuration, would be Volvo. I've seen Volvos being used in this setting. In fact, as dump trucks, I've seen mostly MAN, Volvo, Scania, and Mercedes. Iveco trucks exist with this configuration, but it's very rare to spot one. Just like Duff, but I'd say Duff is just more popular. Renault trucks, I noticed the latest Renault truck, which is based on the Volvo chassis, earned popularity with this setting. Otherwise, this setting did not exist for Renault trucks before Volvo's involvement. MAN trucks with this setting. MAN appears to be very popular with this setting. But I've seen MAN trucks are used mostly for heavy duty in this. Like, they are either used either for construction or basically for logistics of construction goods. So my conclusion is Duff, Renault, and Iveco are the best for fleet purchase because they're very cheap to afford, cheap to tax. My opinion of all the trucks, oh, I love them all. I have to say that my favorite would be Duff. I like Duff, and I really like it in this chassis configuration. I'd keep it in this chassis configuration. Or I'd have the... Or I like MAN, but with the 8-wheeler configuration, with the crane right here, you know, putting the crane right here and then moving the goods in the back. Like that would be my favorite. Otherwise, I have to say Volvo is also my favorite in this configuration of 8-wheelers. I think Volvo and MAN for 8-wheelers and Duff for 4-wheelers like this. Otherwise, for 4-wheelers like this, I'd say Renault is not bad either. These are my favorite. Renault, Duff, Volvo, and MAN. Or actually, I'd also choose Mercedes trucks for 8-wheelers. Yeah, I'd also choose Mercedes. Like that would be my favorite 8-wheeler. Like, you know, if I had to choose an 8-wheel truck. And that's it. Otherwise, if we're talking about road tractors for long routes and everything, Duff, I'd say, is also my favorite over there. Duff is my favorite in that regard as well. And then also maybe Volvo as well. Alright everyone, would you all like to tell me what your favorite truck is? Please write it in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos that are on the run. And don't forget to check the links in the description for my car reviews, travel videos, and my creativity videos like this, or also my discussion videos like this. And please don't forget to comment about your favorite truck. Alright, take care everyone. Bye. I have to remark something, and that is, it is extremely rare in terms of garbage truck to see, in terms of garbage trucks, it's extremely rare to see a Volvo, Scania, and Iveco being used. It's for some reason it's rare to see these guys as garbage trucks. I've seen MAN garbage trucks. I have seen those, but they are also a bit rare, but they exist.